How's everybody?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear it. It's dark out. Very. Completely. It doesn't feel right.
It's nice to get that extra hour of sleep, but it starts to feel like a long day then.
So we get an extra hour of sleep?
If you count what you get to sleep in, the alarm clock goes off
Later?
an hour later.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you also go to bed an hour later, so it really.
Well, except our clocks, our internal clocks.
5 o'clock feels like 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Which also means I'm starving by 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I am, well, that's typical for me anyway, but I'm always hungry. Well, good day. Ferdinand. Yay, but first we have some other things. As usual, hi Jennifer, hi Kirsty.
Hey.
Anybody else out there? Okay. Shay's not there? So tonight is Ferdinand. It's all about the flowers, and we've got the three things that we looked at with, well, no, two things. I looked at a third with Ferdinand, the film. Who else watched Ferdinand, the film?
I have.
Okay.
I meant to, but
Sorry.
And then this is the Disney, which won an Academy for short film, 1936, Disney, from Disney. And it's about flowers and other things. So what's going on today? What's going on? Next week it's Cinderella, online students response to lecture due anytime Tuesday. So, and that all should be available for you. It'll be Cinderella the film and the Perot version. And if you want to come up with some other things and provide some links, that's fine too. Questions about the annotated bib?
I do have a question.
Okay.
I know it's shocking. I never have questions. Okay, so we have our citation. Do you want us like, okay, space, and then start in with the annotation, or do you want us to go to like hit enter, indent? Like how do you want it done?
I don't care on that part. I don't care on that part.
In the annotation itself, are you looking just for a summary of the specific reference or how it specifically relates to our paper?
I want a summary of the argument. I want the argument, and then as you summarize it, you'll highlight what's relevant for your paper. You won't say and relevant for my paper, or I guess you could. I guess you could say that, and that'd be fine. And then the conclusions they draw.
I provided like beyond the 10 sources because some of them were short like introductions and things. Do you want me to provide annotations for those really short introductions as well, or just the longer ones?
Just the long ones. I only need 10. Don't make me read more than I need to. Don't be writing more than
I
you
will
need
do
to.
more than I need to, so no worry, right?
Yeah, and remember that, well, when you write the paper itself, you won't, I know you shouldn't include all 10 sources in your paper. You might mention a couple at the beginning or something in your conclusion or something midway. And if you do, be sure to use your in-text citations. And, but the purposes of the annotated bib is so that you don't have to write a long paper. That you get your research done on this topic and get to focus mainly on the ideas that you're working with.
I had another question. So one of my sources, it's one of Frank Baum's short stories that he wrote. So how would do I just talk about like the short story itself and then how?
Well, that's not a scholarly source.
Okay,
So you wouldn't talk about it at all.
okay.
No, that's a primary text. So you can talk about it in your paper,
Right,
but you won't annotate it.
okay.
Only scholarly sources in the annotated bib. Other questions? Kirsty, Jennifer, other questions?
I think I'm okay.
Okay,
I think I'm good.
good. And we're going to continue with the giver discussion board from the online students. There was some really good stuff in that I just kept putting it in and putting it in. And Ferdinand and Little Red. And then discuss an article, your research, and create more time because we can't fit everything in today. It's pretty crowded. But let's see what we can do. So I'm going to the discussion board. Danielle had a really good point that I never thought, how many times can I read this novel and something just gobsmacks me? But Danielle did. Lots of you did, actually. Before I get to the discussion of the novel, I want to address what was discussed in class. As for why it is an issue that there is no diversity in the community, it does perpetuate racist ideology, but on a more sinister note, what happened to all the people of color? True, it could just be that they did not allow them to reproduce until everyone of color died out. And that kind of harkens back to the eugenics programs in the United States, where they sterilized women, mostly women, so that they wouldn't reproduce. But they didn't tell them that's what they were doing. They just, it happened a lot with the Native Americans. And they'd take them they'd go to the doctor, these clinics that they'd set up. They'd say, come and see us. We have free treatment for you and you can get your checkups and stuff. And the next thing they know, they're walking out with it, with, I don't know if they did tubal ligations or if they did hysterectomies or what. I don't know when tubal ligation actually started to come into use, tube tying. Rachel, would you look that up? So if they did, if tubal ligation was not a possibility at that time, they were doing hysterectomies, which is a major surgery, and especially then. But a lot of women died as a result of the surgery because surgeries weren't that safe. And this was, did it go up into the 50s?
The 70s.
70s that they were doing the, yeah, and
They
there's,
actually just sterilized 300 female prisoners in California in 2010. Did this exact same thing to them. Sterilized them without their consent.
I feel like something similar was done with black men,
yeah, well, the Tuskegee thing was,
it wasn't sterilization per se. It was something else.
the Tuskegee experiment took black men in the service, gave them syphilis and didn't tell them that they'd given them syphilis, and then just watched to see what would happen as they spread it and died, because you can die of syphilis after a certain point. So that might be what you were thinking of.
I think so.
This says, well up into the 70s, 1 out of 4 Native American women were involuntarily sterilized through tubal ligation or hysterectomy.
So either one.
Is it too Pollyanna to think that they were in another community?
Oh, but that's a possibility because there are other communities. Lily lets us know that because they're rude elsewhere.
Right.
Well, not elsewhere, but in other
They don't know the
communities.
rules and they cut in front of you on the slide. How
I
dare they?
know, how awful. Little, she's such a, but my mind went to a more sinister idea of genocide, and I'd never thought of that because I'm too Pollyanna, I guess. Why don't I think of all these things?
Genocide's actively happening before our eyes in the book. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
even-
So why didn't everybody's mind go there? We're told right off the bat. You do bad 3 times, you're out. So yeah, I don't know. Because I think if anybody watched Soylent Green, they know exactly what happens when they release somebody, an older person.
It's people.
Yeah, so Soylent Green, who's not seen Soylent Green? Okay, cool, classic.
I'm kind of familiar with it.
I haven't.
but
Yeah.
I'm not anywhere close to familiar. Just
Okay, so in Soylent Green, it's into the future, and starvation is an issue. It's overpopulation and starvation. So what they ultimately do is kill the older people and others as well, and turn them into food products. But nobody knows. And in fact, they're given this, they're sent off in this lovely ceremony.
the prettier the ceremony, the scarier it should be.
Pretty much, though.
So I made a mistake this week and I read A Wrinkle in Time, and the parallels between that and The Giver were really eerie on
Camazotz.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway through.
Yeah, it's
Charlton Heston. Okay, that's good. And she's mentioned a couple of the other things Danielle did. This has always been one of my favorite novels, and it still is. But now it is one of my favorite novels because of how problematic it is. I like it because of how much of a mirror it holds to our society. Also, it was discussed that the giver was Rosemary's father. The giver tells Jonas that he had a family, that his wife lives with childless adults. When I read that Rosemary was the giver's daughter, I assumed that she was part of his family unit. And the triangular hedges that Jonas, Asher, and Fiona, so we've got a triangle, but that water thing, the triangle, would go to get away. You mentioned how the 3 would get soaked on their way to get to it. First off, the obvious sexual reference. You know what? I did not catch. Of course, that triangle is a sexual reference. I hate it when I get caught off unawares on that kind of thing, because I'm accused of reading sex into everything when very obviously I don't. I saw that as a baptism of sorts, washing away the coldness of their community and entering a place where they can be more themselves. So, yeah, that triangle, it's ionic. We've got phallic and ionic. Phallic being the male strength, the penis, and ionic being the vagina, the female. And that triangle fits right in with that. Jennifer, apples in the Bible. So you want to talk about this?
Yeah, it was interesting. I teach this book all the time, and we're always talking about the apple and sort of the symbolism, of course, in the film. It turns color and all these things. And when I was watching the lecture and you guys were talking about oh my gosh, objective correlatives and stuff, I was thinking about it. And so I really quickly and very innocently just looked it up, and I found that passage, and all that it said, it was just a quick, I don't even know if it was Wikipedia or what, it was not scholarly for sure, but it was just something about that Hebrew text. And so then I'm looking at that in the actual Bible, and I realized that Asher, was the name that preceded one of the earliest mentions of actual apples in the Bible. And I thought that was an interesting connection.
Okay, and then more. See, I just couldn't. I just had to copy and paste a whole bunch. You talked about the lack of reliability in Lowry's novel because of memory. You can. Would you address that, please?
Yeah, so that was like one of those shower thoughts. Like I was like, it opened up one of these, just a can of worms, I felt like, because as I mentioned in my post, in my other class, I was doing a critical analysis on Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. And so I was discussing in that, how the reliability was lacking because this was told from multiple narrators, and it revisits other scenes later on and tells them in a different way because those characters had, undergone change. And I just sort of made this connection in my mind to The Giver, which isn't something I really dwelled on much with The Giver, which was this idea of giving and receiving memories. And then, of course, how they're sort of received with this sort of inherent bias from whomever the giver was at that time. And so there have been, multiple givers. So sort of this idea of passing these memories, which of course becomes sort of the foundation for their society and this community. But of course, they're being transferred with this bias and this sort of interpretation that alters over time. And then I sort of, like I said, opened up this can of worms because then I was like, oh, that's kind of like our history. So when we're reading these history textbooks and they're, written by whomever was there, but, they're written with bias. And then people that are no longer living in that time read these history textbooks and then have to, kind of accept these as truths when the truth was lost long ago. Much like in The Giver with these memories and these giver and receiver roles. And then I go on to talk about how I honestly found it funny, almost laughable, that you have this issue with first-person narration and a lack of reliability. But then you think, well, that shouldn't have been an issue in this story because we have an omniscient narrator. But because of this, placement of the giver and receiver roles and that bias that comes with these memory transfers, you end up kind of stepping in that landmine anyway. Even though you have an omniscient narrator that should know everything, everything that is quote unquote known can't be known as fact.
Yeah, and I didn't consider the unreliability and the bias that's built into those memories because I just kind of assumed that somehow, even though I know better, that there is no such thing as an unbiased history, that he was somehow conveying an unbiased history. And it's like the telephone game, though, because he's, it's gone back and back and back. So whoever gave the memories to this giver and then the ones to the previous giver. So with the telephone game, isn't that what it's called? That things get distorted with the telling of each telling of the story. Yeah, so history's not unbiased. It's always shaped. Even that just escaped me completely. I'm so glad I brought this. This is why I love to teach The Giver, because there's so much to talk about. Did you mention the mandrake in this?
I did, yeah. In my earlier post, that was that Hebrew passage, which I feel like I'm going to butcher if I attempt to say it. But yeah, it's like the mandrake dudayim or something like that, which translates from Hebrew to love apples, which I think is also interesting that they love apples out of all things.
Well, yeah, and here's a mandrake, and which is really phallic, and so mandrake root helps Rachel conceived Jacob. Greek mythology, Circe and Aphrodite are thought to use it as an aphrodisiac. A member of the nightshade plant family, mandrake contains hallucinogenic and narcotic alkaloids. Tells us that a wine cup full of mandrake root was used as an anesthetic in ancient Rome. Be careful, though, with too much, one might end up dead. But it was used, over the centuries, legends surrounding the mandrake's different sexes and human shape grew stronger. Plants resembled certain body parts, could be used to treat ailments of those body parts. And as the plant with the shape of the human body, aren't they putting that delicately? It's the penis, just in case you didn't know. a mandrake root shaped like a baby slipped underneath one's pillow every night could help a woman conceive, or shaped like a woman and carried in one's pocket could help a man secure his desired lover. To resolve their woes, fraudsters counterfeited them out of carved bryony root to satisfy the growing demand. There you go. The shrieking mandrake of Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's all I can think of now when I hear it. Man.
Pan's Labyrinth. Can you see Pan's Labyrinth?
Yeah.
The mandrake root and a spell and put it under the bed.
Yeah. But I don't remember. It's been.
They put.
I don't remember why they put it under the bed.
Spell. I want to.
What they were trying to
It's
accomplish.
been a while since I've seen it.
It's been ages.
I don't know. Something dead or some kind of curse. I don't remember.
Anyway.
It's used prominently in witchcraft too. It's
Yes.
Powerful
Yes.
root,
Yes.
supposedly.
And much of the time, it has sexual connotations. So putting it with Genesis, or not Genesis, but you put it with Hebrews.
So it's a Hebrew translation, but I believe it was found in
Oh.
chapter 30 of the book of Genesis. Yeah.
Okay, so Genesis, the beginning of things, the love apple, that makes good sense. That because that whole business about what Eve does with her curiosity. Now that's not mandrake isn't a fruit; it's a root. But that it's associated with Eve, that it's associated with a love apple, then you can kind of see where these connections come from a little bit.
Let's see, the root was given to Ophelia. Okay, so the book in Pan's Labyrinth, but took place during wartime. And remember the girl, the main character, her mother was sick and pregnant. So the root was given to her by the fawn to place under her mother's bed in a bowl of milk. And she fed it with drops of blood to heal her mother. So it was a healing spell.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But she's pregnant, and it's under the bed in milk. Kirsty, it's your turn. You're up. Kirsty? Hello?
Can't remember what I wrote about. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Mm-hmm. You were about quite a bit.
The lag, and I had it on mute.
You talk here, they just walk around and aimlessly complete their chosen tasks without even blinking or questioning what they're doing. So without memories, society has become a timeless, repetitive loop. Again, I feel like as humans, we bring so much baggage to the novels we read. Losing my sister 2.5 years ago was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, but what gets me through my grief are the memories my family and I share of the times we had with her. Contrastingly, the point of living, in this type of society was to relinquish the citizens of pain. I find memory as a way of dealing with pain. So I thought that was really insightful. And so, but I couldn't help but to bring this up, the myth of, Sisyphus, because Sisyphus was just a little Dickens. He was a god, and he was king of Corinth, I think, and he pulled a trick. He captured Hades. Hades came directly to Sisyphus to take him to Hades, to the underworld. And now the translation is loose because handcuffs weren't, but think handcuffs so Hades brings with him handcuffs, and Sisyphus says, well, show me how those work. And so Hades puts him on himself, and thus Sisyphus captures Hades and throws him into a closet and keeps him there, which means nobody dies for a bit. So he finally, Hades is finally released somehow, and then he's very angry at Sisyphus for pulling this stunt, and he comes to get him again. This time, Sisyphus avoids death by begging his wife, Persephone, ordering her not to bury him, and then not to put the coin under his tongue as the payment to get the crossing for the river Styx. So she does that, and he gets there and says, but I need this time to clear up these problems, and let me go back home, and we'll take care of that. Bury me, the payment for the river Styx, getting across the river Styx. So off he comes back home, and he's fooling him again then, and fooled death again. And this time, Hades gets really pissed off, and he says, here is your punishment for the rest of your life. Oh no, for eternity. You will push this boulder up this hill, and you will get to the top of it, and it will fall back down. And your job is forevermore to push that rock up the hill. Other punishments for other misbehaviors of other individuals has been which one was it that got his liver eaten every time? Who was that? Prometheus? Yeah, that was Prometheus for light. So here is Sisyphus. This is what he's doomed to for the rest of his life. But then, of course, Albert Camus, French philosopher, said, and others, I can't remember the essay that wherein it's a female writer, and she says, but we must imagine Sisyphus be happy, because what do we do every day but push that rock up the hill? That's the existential predicament that we're in. We just do a really good job of dressing up our lives so as not to become suicidal in thinking about that existential existence that we engage in. So it's a willing denial, and a necessary one, in order to not go crazy in the process. But yeah, we do I'm here every Wednesday.
I've with coworkers in the past, just at work, it's a good analogy for corporate America too. I mean,
it truly is.
As workers, we're really just, we exist to put money in other people's pockets. We come, we push the boulder,
and that's what capitalism is, for sure.
Right, and every day we come, we push the boulder up the hill, and the next day it's down at the bottom waiting for us again.
Waiting for us again.
Well, I mean, that's a great analogy for public schools too. Because I teach high school, and the kids, I teach them, and I think they've got it, and they come back the next day and they're like, what? And, you didn't tell us that, miss. Yes, precious, I did. You're a senior in high school. You should know what an adjective is by now. Whether I told you or someone in 5th grade told you, we're pushing the same rock up the same hill every day, everywhere.
I will tell you a quick little story. I'm teaching freshmen, honors freshmen, 1302, the writing course. And I have one of these D2L things, set up everything pretty straightforward, try to my best, but the assignment's there. A student emails me and says, because they're doing different bibliographies, annotated bibliographies than you are, but it's kind of the same principle. And so on it, I say, I want the function statement. We go over the function statement in class. I've identified it on the on our D2L page. And so he says, do we need to put, he sends an email, do we need to put a function statement? I've asked others in class and they don't know. So I go into the class and I copy and paste, include function statement, bibliography and function statement. That's the title of the assignment. And then I say, yes. And he writes back and said, I've asked others and they don't know what a function statement is. And so I go into D2L, copy and paste to put it in. And then I ask the question, tell me why it is that I write out these assignments. How pathetic. That it's just.
Those are the honors kids.
And those are the honors kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing all the time. And I teach the same things all the time. Periods before quotation marks, unless followed by an in-text citation. You know, this is what you have to do, these things. Yet I get some kind of joy from doing it. Some sick, twisted something in me.
Maybe I'm a little bit deluded about teaching in general. I mean, my goal is to, to this master's degree is a path to doing something else, to changing. In corporate America, really all I feel like I do is make money for other people. Right? I mean, I make money for myself. I'm obviously, self-sufficient, my family. But in teaching, at least, there's something else happening, right? You are making an impact. You may feel like, oh man, here we go again, right? Same conversation, same kid sometimes, right? But you make differences in other ways. I think teaching, in my mind, is a nobler cause than.
What do you do? Unless you don't want to tell us.
No, I'm a director of product management for a software company. We have 5 products. We have business analysts report to me. And just in summary, we build software, I manage a backlog, and it's fairly monotonous. Doesn't bring me a whole lot of joy. Pays pretty well, gets our kids through college, and keeps a roof over our head. But it's not what makes me happy.
Right.
That's why I'm here.
And teaching does, for the most part, make me quite happy. As I think about the next semester and how I'm going to do it and do it better so that students get a better handle on things. I've been doing for as long as I can remember practically. So Sisyphus, that's us. Michael, as a debate coach, critical race theory has exploded in the past few years. And you should know we had Dr. Michael Eric Dyson on campus. Did anybody hear? What'd you think?
I'm still processing. I thought he's a great speaker.
Oh, yeah.
There was so much to unpack there.
Yeah, and he did it in an hour. I've never seen such a jam-packed talk. He appears on CNN a lot. He's a black man he's a professor, a philosopher. He's written several books. He just wrote the foreword. His last writing is a foreword to a book called White Fragility, Why White People Can't Talk About Race or have a hard time talking about race or something like that. And so he came in, he talked about white privilege. He also talked about black exceptionalism and how like people like Obama and sports stars and they're kind of lifted and aren't really black. He talked about how black men need to straighten their act up in the way that they treat women. That what's this business about all the rap that just degrades women? Why are they doing that? And they please stop.
Dropping homophobia.
And homophobia in the black church, especially. So he didn't. I shouldn't say attack. He did not critique as far as I can remember, anything about women. Did he? He kind of left us alone. Of course, we're not the ones that make war and serial kill and go into churches and shoot everybody up and that kind of thing. So it was a really interesting discussion, and there were a lot of uncomfortable people. Really uncomfortable. I'm gonna find out if they taped it. I don't know if they did or not, but I hope they did. So I'll give you the link if that's the case. But I teach at a school that is historically prominently white, yet our school is closer to 50-50 white and Hispanic now. I have received some comments to me about stirring up problems because I have exposed the students to the inherent white privilege and the white hat is good, black hat is bad concepts. I have not found that ignoring these concepts makes them go away. And that's what Dyson was saying. It doesn't go away. It just festers underneath, and it has been for a long time. If anything, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And the more I point it out, the more we can eliminate it. While students struggle with it the most, and I am not sure if it is out of self-defense or simply lack of exposure, last year's national debate topic was on education, which my students were shocked to learn that a success in education comes from being as close to white as possible. This year's topic is immigration, which has led to many great conversations about white immigrants versus non-white immigrants. So yeah, that the whole idea about color and what happens in it, in the novel, and what happens with Z for Zachariah brings some pretty interesting things to the fore. Has anybody seen Get Out, by the way? Pretty fascinating. Take it. You're grinning. What'd you think of it, Umberto?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. That last scene when the cop car comes in, and it's him and his girlfriend. Or well, yeah. Okay, so I'm not spoiling anything. But that last scene though was amazing. And there are parts, especially there's a part where they're having a party, and it's like they're playing a game. Should I spoil it? Are y'all gonna watch it?
Yes.
I've never even heard of
all
it. What is it? Is it a horror movie?
It's a thriller.
It's a thriller.
I think it's technically considered a
Psychological thriller.
But there's some really great messages on race.
Well, hold on.
It's incredible.
That's awesome.
Not
It
even
is so good.
on a bet.
It is so good.
No?
I wouldn't sleep for a week.
So how's it feel to like I am big?
Yeah, so what?
Yeah,
So this is uncharted territory for
The
you know, I don't want to get chased off the lawn with a shotgun.
is
You're not going to. First,
so good.
Yeah.
That one part where they're showing the bingo cards. I didn't expect that part.
All right, no spoilers. No spoilers. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, it really is pretty
It's one
fascinating.
that you can watch over and over and over and catch something new every
time.
time. There's like one scene where there's a character who's eating Fruit Loops, and she has the Fruit Loops in one bowl and the white milk in the other, and it's symbolic of how she as a character is believes she mentions it at one point. She's like separate but equal. How she believes that they should be separate. This symbolism is so good.
I have to watch it again.
Oh, so well deserving of every award it won.
What, that movie scared the living daylight out of me.
You
I'll
did?
never watch it again. Oh my gosh,
Thank you,
yes.
Kirsty. Make me feel better.
Like, I'm a little, like, my heart is racing a little bit just watching the trailer. Like, because I've seen the movie. Oh no, I'll never watch it again.
No, like my blood pressure is up right now just watching the trailer. Like I can't
How interesting.
can't
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
Who knew we'd go the places we go in this class? I did, but. So it is white fragility, why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. And here's the Michael Eric Dyson. In this vital, necessary, and beautiful book, anti-racist educator Robin DiAngelo deftly illuminates the phenomenon of white fragility and, quote, allows us to understand racism as a practice not restricted to bad people. Referring to the defensive moves that white people make when challenged racially, white fragility is characterized by emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and by behaviors including argumentation and silence. These behaviors in turn function to reinstate white racial equilibrium and prevent any meaningful cross-racial dialogue. In this in-depth exploration, DiAngelo examines how white fragility develops, how it protects racial inequality, and what we can do to engage more constructively. It's on my list to read. Anyways, there you go. Stephanie, being aged up even by 6 years this is a fascinating comment, takes away the child's agency for change and courage present in the novel. It's a whole different thing when a teenager, almost really on the brink, on the cusp of manhood. So what is he, 16 in the 17 in the novel? So
In the novel?
I mean in the film.
Yes.
But he's 12, he's coming on into 12 in the novel. A very big difference in Jonas in the novel making this move to Jonas in the movie doing what he's doing. Then we have a love triangle, and while I appreciate Fiona, the female lead, getting a more prominent role in the film than she does in the novel, she is relegated to just a love interest and nothing more. I also did not care for the concrete ending the film gave. I know there are sequels to the novels, which is disappointing to learn, but focusing solely on the novel we read, we are given the choice of the ending, which I think is so fitting and turns parallel to Jonas's choice. So when the film serves us an ending with no ambiguity, the choice we had in reading is robbed. And one of the things that I didn't make a point of, but I should, is that when I wrote A Return to Normal, Lois Lowry's Giver, I was talking about how science fiction dystopia, there's one analyst and writer of science fiction who says there's no good science fiction that is not political science fiction, because science fiction is almost always political. And dystopia, you can be guaranteed that it's political in some way, that it offers a critique. The problem that I see with The Giver is that Jonas gets on his bicycle, rides out of town with Gabriel, and as readers, we ride along with him, and then we're just returned to normal. Really, his journey in this other place takes the people of the community and makes them where we are right now. Nothing changes, really, and it certainly doesn't change in the movie because it's kumbaya time for the most part at the end of the film. So part of my problem with The Giver is that it is a return. It returns everybody to normal. So everything's okay. Oh yeah, we've got problems with race and diversity, but there's nothing there to suggest anything different. And so, Jonas looks like he's brave. He's not brave. Well, readers might feel brave riding along with him, but there's nothing brave in returning to what you already know in this instance. So that was one of the issues that I've always had with The Giver. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like even reflecting on the book a little bit more this past week, the goal of the book was not necessarily, now the main character goes through this change arc, right? Clearly ends up somewhere completely different, entirely transformed. But you're right, that the society remains somewhat unchanged, although presumably some memory is going to return to society and they're going to cope with that. But again, it will probably settle, right? Again,
Yeah.
that's what we would think.
We could-
Not
yeah.
having read the later novels, I don't know what it
And I
what
quit.
it
I stopped reading.
goes
I
into.
I didn't read the fourth. I've read the three.
I mean, I think that, and maybe I'm missing the point here, but I feel like the point of the giver really is just to change the reader, right? The reader walks away changed.
But
with a
how?
greater understanding.
The reader walks away, phew, glad that isn't happening here. That we're all the same.
Well, but isn't the thrust of the main idea is that sameness isn't good, right? We need diversity in our lives. We need to remember the past. We need to cope with that and deal with it in our day-to-day lives in order to be fulfilled human beings that live fruitful lives, right? And we can't, otherwise we're just automatons that go through the motions with no real meaning.
I don't think the reader comes out changed. I think, well, I mean, possibly.
Well, it's something that presumably a lot of us should know inherently, right? Or think that we know it, but
I don't think so much, because this is not a very different world than what the reader is going to know that he is giving us. So yeah, we're going to have choices. We have choices. And it's kind of this, thank goodness I don't live in that world and that I live in this world. But it's the same world that he's returning us, the readers, to a recognizable world that we already know and engage with. Why not give us something different? I don't think it gives us anything different. I think it maybe provides some comfort and a return to normal. So just something to think about.
Which again is ironic that it's called the giver if it doesn't give us anything but a return to normal.
Yeah. Okay. This is Thomas. I did not know it was Jonas was dead, hallucinating due to the hypothermia. Even knowing there's a continuation, I still feel like this conclusion is the most logical. We know that Rosemary died. Her knowledge was released without her having to cross any barrier. Therefore, if Jonas is releasing the knowledge and freeing everyone, the argument could be made that his death is necessary. Kind of the Christ figure. Because Christ has to die in order to save humanity. Further, one could argue that the giver knew that this would be necessary. This is very nefarious. When he sent Jonas into the wild, his insistence on staying behind to help everyone adjust makes more sense in this context as well, because if he went with Jonas into the wild, he would likely die as well and could not return to aid the community in recovering, or he'd die. And the giver doesn't really want to die, if you think of it. He hasn't done it before.
It's the one thing he hasn't experienced.
Uh-huh. When the film reached its end, I still felt Jonas was dead. I did too, especially when the baby stops crying shortly before Jonas awakens. The idea that Jonas is powerful enough to release memory into the physical form of the cabin and the sled is too much of a jump or deus ex machina moment. We have no evidence prior to this moment that he is able to do this. Additionally, the proximity of the exact cabin and the sled to the border is too convenient to be believed. Reading the novel or viewing the film in a standalone manner also prevents the ending of both from being viewed in any other light than Jonas dying. So I gave it that nefarious sense that the giver, of course he doesn't want to die.
Yeah, I had the same thought about the cabin. Well, this is a memory that was given to him and then it ends that way, right? So was it a memory or a premonition, right?
Well,
He's not
there's-
giving premonitions.
There's also the part that the giver never gave him the memory of music in the novel.
Right.
But in the novel, he hears music, right, at the end. So the argument gets made, what does the argument? That,
Like, how could he know it was music unless he
Uh-huh.
was actually hearing it? He didn't have that memory.
exactly. And more from Thomas. Additionally, in response to the commentary on whiteness present in both works during the lecture, my first reaction to the community being colorblind is such a problematic term. Why would we want to be colorblind? If you take it literally, it just doesn't, dispense with everybody looks the same to be colorblind. That it was a reflection of white ideology. Such notions of living colorblind are, of course, unrealistic in nature. To live blind to differences, especially ones of color, is strictly a white notion. A solution, people of color don't say, colorblind. It's white people who kind of perpetuate that notion. A solution to placate white anxiety based on appearing racist in a society where such ideology is now frowned upon and villainized. There is the irony, too, in not realizing what the idea of colorblindness is also racist in its own way. By not acknowledging the difference, we are also not acknowledging the cultural significance and individuality of people of color. I can read the anxiety and whiteness present in the Lowry novel and in the film, though I believe in terms of the novel that perhaps Lowry acknowledged some of the ideological issues this concept brings about without going beyond her internalized comfort level. Yeah, would agree.
Yeah, I've heard so many times, mainly from white people, say like, oh, I don't see color. And it's like, well, but you're taking away what makes them who they are.
Yes.
So it's a very selfish way of thinking when you say that. And they don't mean it that way.
No,
They just
not in the
don't
least.
know.
They haven't thought it through.
Right, yeah.
Because colorblindness is supposed to be a good thing, that we don't designate somebody, but oh, for goodness sake. Of course we, yeah. And I'd never actually really thought of that as being problematic. In this way, I've always said that the term colorblind is problematic, but I couldn't quite get to why, except for that it erased individuality and culture. That it is, colorblindness is racist in its own way because we're not acknowledging the cultural significance. That I'd never thought of it as being a white notion.
I could just share a quick personal story on this topic, exactly what you're saying. We have 4 kids, and our 2 youngest children are adopted. They're Asian. Our third oldest child is from China, and then our youngest child was adopted from South Korea. And my wife tends to speak freely about race and the impact of them and their ethnicity on their lives, and talks a lot about that in front of them, with me, and that sort of thing. And at one point she related to me a conversation that she had with Anna, who is our Chinese daughter, about why is Dad not comfortable whenever you bring up that I'm Chinese. And I didn't even realize that this was something that I did. And it wasn't because I'm not comfortable with her being Chinese. Obviously, I adopted her, right? I love her. She's my child, my daughter. But I was thinking, I was feeling like I didn't want it to be an issue, right? That race isn't an issue. I see them as people. I see them as my daughter. I see them as my son. And I love them. I hate to say it, but I see that they're, different from me visually, but they're people, and I love them as my son and daughter. So I don't feel like that needs to be a prevalent topic, in these conversations. But until my wife told me about Anna feeling that way, about the way that I would react when these types of conversations would come up, I didn't really process it. And she took it as I'm not comfortable with her in her race. And it was a lot to process when she dropped that on me, because I had to kind of rethink of, well, is it really an extension of me not being comfortable with her race? I don't know. I don't think,
Oh,
I mean,
so
it's not,
loaded.
there's a lot that goes on there, right?
It's so loaded.
It's hard to.
Because you're uncomfortable possibly with thinking about her future.
I don't want them to be impacted by it, right? But I can't
Right.
keep them from being impacted by it.
Right.
And that's the issue, right? I don't want them to have to deal with it at such a young age. If somebody's not, if somebody hasn't come at them directly with it, and I don't have an opportunity to explain it in that context. And I guess that's what I was trying to protect them from, but she saw it a different way.
Yes. Well, and something else also happens in terms, for instance, I don't know if we talked about this. Black parents raising black children, how different it is for them. The things that they have, especially males, the things that they have to tell their boys. Don't run. Be careful where you go. Be careful how you respond to anybody in authority. Be especially careful of who it's even more important to be careful of who you hang out with. How do you behave? These are not the things that white people have to talk about with their kids necessarily. Oh, sure, they talked about, being polite and not, and hanging out with the right people. But when it comes to a black family, it's a matter of life and death. And it's not that way for most white families. So that's part of that. That's part of the difference. You've got a lot ahead of you in terms, now, I say that you have a lot ahead of you. It's not going to be their reactions necessarily, your kids' reactions, but it's other kids' reactions to them. Now, they've created a home, and they've got the friends, and the friends know who their parents are. And how old are they?
Yeah, so my youngest is 10, and Anna is 14.
Okay, so they've got their groups of friends. They know you. They've been.
They've seen me. They the kids, at that age, are like, "Is that your dad?" Like.
Where'd you get him? Where'd you get him?
So, they've dealt with it and they've processed it. At a young age, they're pretty open about talking about it.
Well, and that's part of the big thing, is to be open to talk about it. It's one of the problems that we have at this time, is the difficulty talking about it. I don't have any issue talking about race with anybody. It didn't used to be that way, but not anymore. In fact, bring it. That's what I want to talk. It's on my mind all of the time, especially on this campus. Because if you look at our population, our undergraduate population, we have a lot of students of color and nationality.
I took one of Dr. Ducomne's classes 2 years ago, and he was talking about diversity, and he was saying, do we have diversity here on campus? And the answer that we came up with is not really, because yes, we have a lot of different groups of people from a lot of different countries and backgrounds.
No intersections.
None. The black students keep to themselves, the Indian students keep to themselves, the white students keep to themselves, and the Koreans keep to themselves. And nobody gets to know each other.
I will say that in my undergraduate classes, generally, there's been a really good it is predominantly white, but my classes are really interracial. It seems like more in undergraduate. Now, I don't have Indian students to speak of because most of them are in computer science stuff, and they're graduate students. And they're graduate students and Indians. So that's not the case, but I'd say about what's between a fourth and a half.
Third.
Okay, what's between, I'd say just a little less than a third of my class are students of color, my classes.
We were watching Milk last night in Duchovny's class, and it's about Harvey Milk. And so Harvey Milk was talking, he basically said, the problem is people need to know someone personally who is gay or homosexual, and then they'll get it. And I think that goes with race too, because it really clicked for me. I was dating this guy, and we dated for 4.5 years. And he was black, and he called me one day, and he was really upset. And I was like, what happened? And he said, well, I was helping our mutual friend, James, who is white, move. And he was in an apartment complex that was predominantly white people. And so as my boyfriend was moving stuff out of his apartment, older white male stopped him and said, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I'm helping my friend move. And he was like, no, you're not. You're stealing that stuff. I'm calling the cops. And Izzy was like, no, I can go get my friend. He's inside and he can vouch for me. And he was like, no, you stay right there because you're going to run. And he called the cops on him, and the cops came. And he was so upset. And that's when it really clicked for me, like, wow, you don't think that that stuff hits so close to home, but it does. So, yeah.
Yeah. Makes me want to cry.
Yeah, he was really upset, and I haven't seen him that upset ever. He was he played football, and he was very involved in his community. He's the nicest person ever, and you see something like that happen to him, and he's so upset, and it's just like, I mean, it was like a 30-minute ordeal, and he was trying to convince this guy that, no, I'm just helping my friend move, and he couldn't even do that. So, and I think that's where a lot of people, when you're surrounded by people that are very similar to you and there's no diversity, you're not going to get it, and it's no one's fault that they don't get it. It's just because they haven't been exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much a lot of what you've spoken to goes a great deal to what I've been talking about in terms of that diversity, and if I don't talk about it, I think the English department is pretty good about talking about race, because we're so much more aware than, say, business, or you would think history would be. I don't know how faculty in other departments are. I know that it's part of all of my classes all of the time, and you had me as an undergraduate.
399.
Yeah, and so did we talk about race?
Probably. We talked about whiteness studies.
Let's talk about race.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways.
Are we off in the weeds?
It's so crazy though how society has just changed. Because okay, so in July, on the anniversary of my sister's death, I got pulled over for speeding on my street. And I had a Honda Pilot then, and I keep my wallet in this little cubby. And so, being a cop's daughter, the first thing I do when he asks for my license is say, do you mind if I reach in here and get my wallet out? And he's like, oh my God, why? Do you have a gun?
Oh dear
Like-
God.
I was like, no, I just need to get my wallet, but I like know better than to just reach in there, you know, and freak you out. So I'm just asking if it's okay that I get my wallet. And he was just like so rude to me after that. Like, I was so upset about it. Like, I deserved the ticket, whatever. I was speeding. I did my defensive driving. I paid it, whatever. But I was so ticked off about the way he treated me after that I called the police station and spoke to the supervisor. Like, and I thought I was doing the right thing, just asking to get my wallet.
Yeah, the last time I got stopped, that's what I did. And he wasn't angry. Of course, I was shaking like a leaf because every time I get stopped by any kind of authority figure, I freak. Because
Me
that's
too. I was like
that's the kind of
terrified. I was
person I am.
already crying. Like,
I was too. Did I get a ticket? Nope, I didn't. I was younger.
mine was
and prepared.
$232.
Woo. Yikes.
I did defensive driving.
Yeah, the last time, I know I did defensive driving at some point. I don't remember when, but anyways. Yeah. When you called, what did they say?
Well, I didn't know that his supervisor, so long story short, his supervisor was actually the police officer that found my sister when she passed away at my house. So she said, well, why didn't you call me and when you got pulled over? And I was like, well, I wasn't going to make excuses. Like, it doesn't matter why I was speeding. So whatever, And she was like, well, yeah, he's a newbie and he's already gotten us in trouble with his attitude. And she's like, oh, he'll be reprimanded. She's like, she's like, I don't know why you didn't just call me, because I knew exactly, like, because it was the morning of the 2-year anniversary of my sister's passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, I knew, she's like, once you told me, like, when he pulled you over, she's like, I knew what was going through your head. I was not. Yeah. So I don't know what happened to him, but.
And what do you think would have happened if it were a black man that got pulled over?
I wouldn't have survived.
He probably would have been pulled out of the car. Like, when he jumped down my throat, like, I'm in a family vehicle, like, I couldn't, my dad was a cop for 28 years in the Air Force. I know how to speak to authority, I know how to be respectful. That's why I asked to open it in the first place. And I can't imagine, like, if I would, even if I were a black female, like, oh my God, it would have, I was infuriated.
Yep. I'm sure. All right. So, what was it? Oh, okay. One thing I forgot to mention in the discussion of aging up. So with the films so far that we've had, aged up in Watson's,
everything.
Z for Zachariah.
Z for Zachariah, and this. And in all three, something has gotten sexualized in some way, or is there for us to look at, to watch. So the comments I made about Byron and how he's sexed up too. And then we have the kids in The Giver and going into the triangle and the romance connection, but there's still that it gets sexualized, and in Z for Zachariah, it gets sexualized. And you want to make any observations about that?
I tend to think it's Hollywood, but it's maybe too broad of a brush. But I mean, there's an audience. I think they're trying to reach a broader audience if they had kept it as, let's just say, sanitized. Although I wouldn't say Z for Zachariah was sanitized by any means.
No.
it was pretty dark, and it would have been more or less like what I would consider to be pretty much a horror film had they filmed the book. But I don't know. I think that they're just trying to appeal to a broader audience. They feel like that sex has to be a part of the equation somehow in order to be appealing to the general public or a larger audience, and they don't want to pigeonhole their movie lest they lose millions of dollars.
Like easier to find talent that's older as well.
That's another good observation. Although I don't know, yeah.
So if we
More
remove
interesting to watch.
sex from a movie, you're pigeonholing it into not, like, nobody's gonna want to. What kind of culture do we live in if that's the case?
We know what kind of
I don't
culture
know.
we
I mean,
live in.
I'm just.
We know
I mean,
what-
do you agree with it or do you disagree?
No, I was gonna say my answer is sex sells. I just think,
Yeah.
I'm just echoing, I guess, what you're saying, and
Right.
echoing it in a
Yeah.
way of like, wow.
Disgust.
Isn't
Right?
this,
What
what does this
world we
say about
live
who we
in.
are as a culture? Because
I feel like though that the Hollywood wants to sell us things that we don't necessarily, they think they know what we want, but it's not always it. It's the same thing with the music industry, giving us certain types of groups and certain types of bands for the longest time. And it's not quite as true today with the internet now where you can download whatever you want and anybody can have an album out there. But it was more true, like we get kind of radio rock when, you go see a great band that's doing something new and groundbreaking in a bar and they never made it anywhere, right? I think that these big conglomerates have decided what we, the masses, are willing to consume.
now I'm not crazy about at all about the film Wrinkle in Time. It's pretty awful.
Oh no.
Is it really? I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it yet?
I haven't. My
Mine
husband,
is in it, right? So,
my husband
like,
watched it with my kids. And I refuse to watch it because I want to read the book first. I don't like having actors in my mind, like when I'm, you know what I mean? When I'm trying to
Yeah.
read the book.
The
I'm
visual,
very
it's-
big on that.
It's almost impossible to get rid of the visual.
It is. And so it's like right now, I know like some of the actors in it, but I have no idea like which characters there are. Like I know nothing about it. I've never read Wrinkle in Time. So, so I was, my husband was like, oh, we want to watch this, and the kids want to see it. And so they did. They watched it actually, ironically, when I was live streaming into this class a couple weeks ago. But they never said anything about it. And so, man, that's unfortunate to hear. It's not great though. It looked promising to me. I mean, I saw a little bit of a trailer, and then I left the room, but it looked promising. But I guess that's the point of it.
This whole conversation about like appearance and like sexy actors reminds me of when we were talking about Z for Zachariah. Like you mentioned Chris Pine just now being A Wrinkle in Time. When we were talking about Z for Zachariah, we weren't saying Caleb, we were saying Chris Pine.
You're exactly right, because I noticed that too.
Yeah.
I was laughing, and I actually commented about that to my husband. As we called everybody else by their name, but Caleb, we all called Chris Pine.
Yeah. But I didn't because I'm not that familiar with Chris Pine.
Captain Kirk.
He's my favorite actor. It has been for years.
And see, and that makes it a huge difference. I haven't seen him in that much, frankly.
I can give you a
To me, though,
I don't think I have either. Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, see, that never
I
changes.
did see those Star Trek movies though with Chris Pine.
Yeah.
That's where I saw him first.
So, the obvious observation is that they're giving us what they think we want, what they think will sell, which is not the younger audience. It's the older audience with, that's wherein the characters become sexualized.
You got the money to go pay to watch a movie.
That's right. That's right. Although Ferdinand is not too sexualized. They don't have, apparently they've all been castrated.
So there's ears and not
So did you want to talk any more about The Giver? And it's been a rich discussion. I kind of like the way this is has worked that we come back to it the second week, because it gives us time to kind of process some of the things that we've talked about, and then time to connect them to others. So I kind of like the system that we've got here. It works pretty well, I think. I'm happy with it.
Dr. Stewart, did you see my suggestions for your dystopian novels?
What were they? I think I did, but remind me.
Legend by Marie Lu.
Yeah. Tell us about
Have you read that book?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. So it's, set in the future, and the United States is broken up into the Republic and the colonies. And it's really good for teaching like propaganda as well. And there's not a movie on it yet. There will be in a few years, because it just got picked up.
She said Marie.
Oh, Marie.
I'm actually reading it with my stepdaughter right now. Yeah, Marie Lu, L-U.
I've seen the book cover. That's right. Why did I look at this? I looked at this the other day for some reason.
It's a trilogy. That's the first one. And then I thought of another one, but it's not really dystopian. But When by Victoria Laurie, I think is the author. It's a really good book too.
Okay. I found one just, let's see, what is it called? I put it into my wish list. Now, this is going to tell you an awful lot about me. My sister Rosa. Yeah, this sounds like a fascinating one. 17-year-old Aussie Che Taylor loves his young sister Rosa, but he's also certain that she's a diagnosable psychopath, clinically, threateningly, dangerously. Recently, Rosa has been making trouble, hurting things. Che is the only one who knows. He's the only one his sister trusts. Rosa is smart, talented, pretty, and very good at hiding what she is and the violence she's capable of. Their parents, whose business takes the family from place to place, brush off the warning signs as Rosa's acting out. Now that they have moved again from Bangkok to New York City, their new hometown provides far too many opportunities for Rosa to play her increasingly complex and disturbing games. Alone, Che must balance his desire to protect Rosa from the world with a desperate need to protect the world from her. So they're on a, it opens up, I think, with bad seed, yeah, with them on the plane, and she asks her brother about a fire. What would happen if there were a fire on board? And so knowing that what she is, the danger becomes pretty evident. Anyway, it's on my list.
What's it called?
It's called My Sister Rosa. And another one that I'm getting ready to read is
I hate the Valley of the Dolls.
They Both Die at the End.
Oh,
It's a YA novel.
the Valley of the Dolls?
No, They Both Die at the End.
Oh, I was like, I thought you were talking about the characters in the Valley of the Dolls.
No.
I was like, yeah, they do. They both die in the end.
Yeah, no, They Both Die at the End. Mateo and Rufus are total strangers. So on September 5, a little after midnight, Deathcast, which is death, calls Mateo, Torres, and Rufus and Materio to give them some bad news. They're going to die today. Mateo and Rufus are total strangers, but for different reasons, they're both looking to make a new friend on their end day. The good news, there's an app for that. It's called The Last Friend. And through it, Rufus and Mateo are about to meet up for one last great adventure, to live a lifetime in a single day. And it gets just stunning reviews. I don't know if I'm ready for a tearjerker. But
Who wrote that one?
Adam Silvera. So I've got it in my library. It's up very soon to listen to. Anyway, let's talk about some Ferdinand stuff. I'm going to show the short film, which you should have already seen. Okay. Thoughts about the short? Especially when you put it in conjunction with the novel. I mean, not the picture book. Let's see.
Felt like it was pretty.
One guest who never has an argument, who never shows a bit of temperament, who's never wrong but always right, who never dream of starting a fight.
Yeah, it seemed like almost word for word with the picture book. I think the only difference that I noticed anyway was lack of pointy objects. When they brought him into the ring, I mean, he had the sword there at the end and he broke, but in the book they were like, these people are going to poke him with pins and these guys are going to poke him with spears and this guy's going to run his sword through him at the end. That was in the book. But,
Well, and the Matador threw a bigger fit in the film.
Should have downloaded these. I wonder why they decided to award it an Academy. Yeah, and some of the imagery is just precisely, it's just pretty much almost exact. Ferdinand, but not Ferdinand. Quiet Land, Smell the Flowers. Cork tree, favorite tree, sit there.
and
Sometimes
I related to some extent.
to what?
To Ferdinand. Right? He was a relatable
Oh,
character. Right?
This is one of my
Especially
favorite
for-
children's books whenever I was growing up.
I mean, for English majors, probably a lot of people in this. I know I did. You know, I was off, hide out, read a book somewhere, and then go.
you weren't smelling flowers, but you were reading books.
It was just
Off,
yeah,
off
hiding
in
out.
the,
Had no desire whatsoever to
off in the
be a part
clouds.
of the social or whatever was going
Well,
on.
and the bulls have been entirely interpolated. The the little ones have. It starts at birth, and if you watch the film, it's very, very, very clear. And I'm going to show a little bit of that tonight too. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be that's directly from that was in the short. I like it better.
Illustrations too.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they were good.
It's great art.
And that's the exact same wording.
Notice that she has her udders.
Yeah, she has them in the short too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's quite a. he has no testicles.
There's nothing, yeah.
And bull testicles are noticeable.
Yes. Especially if you're sitting on the ground like this.
Hello!
No, because like my grandparents have a ranch and there was one bull, we called him Sitting Bull because he would just be sitting there like a puppy dog, just like out there for the world.
Yep.
Okay, well.
So, and what do you think about that? It's all right to show her teats, but there's no bull balls.
But there are all kind of phallic symbols running around.
Yes.
I may be off base, but immediately for the cartoon and this, I thought Ferdinand was gay.
Yes, he's very much especially in the film, he's very much feminized, or in the short.
He reminded me of Flower from Bambi the skunk. It was like all this smelling flowers and just very kind of effeminate the way he's portrayed.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that now this was 1936 that the short came out, I think, something like that.
38.
38.
Also, it won the award for Best Short Subject.
Uh-huh.
I did find an article though about why it's included as an Oscar, why it gets that nod. This does say it was published in 1936, the book.
Yeah. So there all the bulls are, and they've been banged up quite a bit.
Well, they don't look near as buff, like as thick through the neck as
Mhm.
Ferdinand was.
Even those faces look the same.
Mm-hmm.
In that, yeah.
And he's a spotted bull here. I don't think there was a spotted bull in the,
Yeah, he was just a black bull.
yeah.
They're all pointy objects.
Mm-hmm. So they had to take Ferdinand home. Now, in the long film, if bulls don't meet expectations, they're taken off for slaughter.
Speaking of Pollyanna endings, like if he's not performing, they just have hamburgers that night. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Goodbye.
It also doesn't have the mother in the long film.
No, it doesn't. It has dad, in fact.
It's all, yeah, it's just about the dad.
Yeah, it's all about the dad. And it's all about, it's a totally different story. But yes, I agree with you that Ferdinand ends up pretty well feminized and it's kind of a joke about doing that. And so it juxtaposes the bull masculinity and the masculinity of the matador against Ferdinand, who's big and bulked up, even if he doesn't have his balls, and he's effeminate to some degree. He doesn't say. He only has one. He only says one thing and it's at the very beginning when he's a calf. So some things I wanted to bring up. Now this is from the film. They're blue eyes and brown eyes. I've never seen cattle with blue eyes, but Ferdinand has blue eyes, and this one has blue eyes because the red hair. And here, Valiente is the bull who, he's the bully bull. I'm not going to fight with you, Valiente, says Ferdinand. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He knew they wouldn't pick him and didn't care. And that's going back to the matador, the matador is there getting ready to pick the bull. And the narrator tells us in the film that he knew they wouldn't pick him and he didn't care. And that's from the picture book as well, and the short. Oh, no, sorry, I'm not. Okay, so the first one, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. I'm not going to fight with you, Valiente, is the first slide. This one's from the bull. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. And then this is from the short. He knew they wouldn't pick him and he didn't care. All sitting down in that position. And the film, Ferdinand is talking to his dad. Ferdinand, the whole thing is, for all of these, the calves are watching their fathers compete to be picked for the, what's that thing called? The
bull run, the bulls.
No.
No.
The bullfight. The bullfight. They're to be picked to go to the bullfight. They think that in the film, the deal is, I'm going to beat the matador and I'm going to be recognized forevermore for my bravery and my strength and this feat. And they find out later that what happens to the bulls. But Ferdinand's father are in a conversation about he's just been picked to go to the bullfight, and he says to his son, "This is what every bull dreams of, right?" And then Ferdinand replies, "Is it okay if it's not my dream?" So he's resisting the status quo. He's resisting what he's supposed to do. He's resisting interpolation, basically. And it's this whole, and a sense that when he says, "Is it okay if it's not my dream?" there's this feeling again, perhaps that of his sexuality is in question, but it's never in question in a bad way. In fact, it kind of gets celebrated in the film more than anything. And then here are the bulls in the short looking at the poster.
Same poster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I found that kind of problematic because here you have these animals that are dreaming about
Getting stabbed to death.
yeah, and so it kind of it comes across as like this really kind of morbid thing. That
It's
they're
horrible.
wanting.
Yes, I want to.
Yeah.
They're being interpolated.
Uh-huh.
They've been interpolated so successfully that they're ready to sacrifice themselves.
Right, and it comes across as, well, they're okay with it, so it's fine
Uh-huh.
to do it.
And then here we have Valiente as a calf, and then his father, who is not very, he's unpleasant, very unpleasant, and he's raising an unpleasant bull. And when I can't remember his father's name, but he says, Valiente says to his father, "We'll get them next time, Dad." And he snarls at him, "Who asked you?" And then later, when Ferdinand's father does not come back. The father bull says that he was soft. I knew he'd never make it. And then he says to his son, you better bull up. And he says it with a bit of a snarl. Oh, yeah. You're rolling your eyes, Alex?
Yep.
What would you like to say?
Like this, the second you even said it was the father instead of the mother, I was like, oh, masculinity. Here we go.
Yeah, and that.
Look at the face too on this in this image on the right. I mean, it's not very bold.
Oh.
But it's extremely human.
He what?
Extremely human.
Oh, yeah.
Features there.
So in the film, Ferdinand, it's not that he escapes, he mistakenly escapes the ranch that he's on that grooms calves into fighting bulls. And he ends up in this other place where he finds perfection in just about all ways. That the little girl loves him. He's got flowers all over the place, and this is where he gets to live in the lovely green pasture with all the flowers in the world that he could want. And the father, even, he picks flowers. That's what he does for his living. And they're going to have a fiesta of flowers, and that's what he's preparing for there. And Ferdinand gets to go to the fiesta of flowers throughout. But here we have now, in the film, he sits down and resists fighting. All through the film, it is, I don't want to fight. You can't really make me. I don't want to fight. And I'm not going to fight. And he sticks to his guns in all ways. So here we have, he's in the book. This is him in the middle of the bull ring, and then in the film, or the short film, we have him resisting. Except he's not actually resisting in the book. I mean, he sits down, but it's not that big sense of resistance.
He's distracted. He's distracted in the book. Like, he's distracted by the smell. It's not that he's resisting, it's that his senses are overpowered by
the flowers in everybody in the women's hair and the bouquets.
It's a lack of acknowledgement of what is going on for everybody else.
Blind. Yeah. Now, in the film, it makes it very, very clear, because when there's a point when Ferdinand goes into the I guess it's the ranch where they're grooming, because he ends up back there at the end. He goes to the festival of flowers and ends up creating havoc, and he gets taken away and taken back to the farm, or to the ranch where they groom him for to become a fighting bull. And he goes into this office that has all of the bull horns mounted on plaques on the wall, and it's way up. And that's when he finds out what happens to the bulls. He finds out what happens to his father, because he sees his father's horns mounted on the wall. So when he's coming back, it's about resisting. Why would you want to do that? Are you stupid? And they're just keep saying bulls will be bulls, and that's what bulls do, and we fight. And it's in the film, it's a much more evident type of resistance. And at the end, we get our return to perfection. He gets to go back to the little girl's to the flower farm. And that's the book, the picture book. So you can see that it's quite, I mean, it's almost just exactly the same in the short as it is in the book. Now, just a little bit of adult stuff. This is when, this is an imagining of Valiente, who he's imagining how he will treat the matador and all the picadores and what he will do. And one of the things is that he'll toss up the picks, and that's where they land above on his arms, and then it's just really, really brief. There's hardly any adult humor in this. There's a little play on words, the bull in the china shop, which kids aren't necessarily going to know, but adults do. I really didn't, it wasn't anything like Shrek in terms of that dual audience it addresses, because Shrek was just loaded with all kinds of fun stuff. It was really funny. I love Shrek. I shouldn't, because there were problems with that too. Nobody's surprised, are they? It's Disney. All right, now I want to show you the end of what'd you think of that ending? Huh? Good? Bad? Okay.
There's a lot more active resistance on Ferdinand's part in this.
That is his mission in this film, is to illustrate what it looks like to resist. To resist being categorized no matter what. Because as I said, the other bulls tell him, this is what bulls do. Don't fight it. And then they don't initially want to believe what happens to bulls and who fight, and they don't initially want to believe what happens to bulls that don't meet expectations, that they get taken to the factory to be, they call it the chop shop. And that it's all the way through it about, I don't want to fight, I just don't want to. And the others are always adamant about that fight, because that's what bulls do. And they certainly don't smell flowers. So the film very much develops the concept of resistance and of a peaceful resistance. There's, he does everything he can to avoid hurting anybody or anything. And what else? Yeah, the father relationship, because Ferdinand has a really good relationship with his dad. His dad's very cool. He's a little, but he also has to tell when Ferdinand says, when the father says, this is every bull's dream, and Ferdinand says, can't I have another dream? And he says, well, that's not what bulls do. But he's not that angry bull that Valiente's father is. And it's really clear that Valiente's father has perpetuated a type of violence, and he is the bully of the film. Makes good sense to have a bully in the film, and then how to handle those bullies. And he just keeps doing it with logic and reasoning. which annoys Valiente a great deal. Doesn't like to be met with that calm, no, I'm not going to fight, and I don't want to. Other thoughts on the whole thing?
Because we read Ferdinand over the summer in picture book class, and so going through it again this time, I made the correlation between that and Arlene the Sardine, and how the bulls just go to their fate because it's what they're supposed to do. And they have no idea that their fate, much like Arlene didn't know that to be a sardine meant to die. They don't know that to go to the bull ring means to die. They just don't understand that.
And Arlene the Sardine is a picture book by Chris Rashka. I think that's how you say his last name. And it's about the life of a sardine, that how they go from a bristling to being caught in nets to staying there for 3 days so that they can empty their intestines, then being brought on board and
Spit out in the sun to dry.
and then they're ultimately they die.
They die on the ship, but then they
And they're sealed, hermetically sealed in the tins,
delicately
delicately smoked. And so it's really, and Arlene at the end is lying on a plate, and she has a smile on her face because she's completed her destiny, and which is to die and be eaten by humans. It's an unusual picture book, to say the least. But it's also the life of, this is what fisher, those who fish the sea for bristlings and creating sardines. That's what happens. And that's what happens to the bulls and calves, and they go to their death.
Are these narratives of assimilation?
Mm-hmm. I think they are very much. And resisting assimilation to some degree, because he really gets, it isn't so evident, actually until I saw the long film, I didn't realize how passive his resistance is, and that it isn't actually quite resistance.
None of it's intentional.
No.
He's just being himself.
He's just being himself. The bee sits on the bee, and that's what sets him off and how he ends up. And the whole, there's no, it's not that he refuses, when he doesn't fight, when he gets distracted by the flowers, he's just hauled off back to home. And so there's much greater consequences in the film for him not, the consequences is to be taken to the chop shop and ground into hamburger.
So you either go to the chop shop and die, or you die in the rain, but he finds the third path.
Uh-huh. Yes.
But is the book more sending a message of just be yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all gonna work out?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is more speaking of active resistance.
It is.
Even with them sitting down, I thought of a similarity between like a sit-in
The
protest.
sit-ins.
Yeah, and they're just sitting. So it does change the narrative significantly, even though it tells the story very similarly.
Yeah, and the picture book, it isn't, again, it's not that resistance, that open resistance, but Monroe was a pacifist. And this was when, I think, the Spanish Civil War and America's participation in that. Can you look that up, Rachel? That this was kind of speaking to that. Anyway, that's been some of the speculation.
I don't see anything specifically saying it's about that. But it does say that it was published in 1936, which I can find out. That's when the Spanish Civil War took place. Or anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's, if that's the right war, if I've gotten the right war down. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting depiction and contrast of resistance and what are you nodding at?
Oh, yeah, I found an article about how it is a direct, there's speculation that it's a indirect commentary to the Spanish Civil War. And then it says down here that Hitler banned it and called it degenerate democratic propaganda.
Oh dear, dear heavens. Ferdinand the Bull.
But the Roosevelts loved it.
Okay. So you've read, well, hold on. And that makes it all the more sad to know that the father doesn't make it back, that his horns end up on a wall.
Anybody else find it interesting that there's no cows in there at all? Like, how do you have bull calves with no cows running around?
Don't know. And the common goat is the only female.
Yeah.
And the little girl.
Well, cows aren't going to be there because that ranch is built for bulls. Like,
Mhm.
so they're just bred and then brought to that ranch to.
Well, I didn't actually get the sense that they were brought there. I got the sense that they're bred there, and they separate them out from their, the mothers as
Whenever they're weaned.
whenever they're weaned.
I was gonna say, how else would they know their dad?
Yeah. Yeah.
And why don't the dads have multiples? Because, it's how it works.
Mhm.
I'm digging too much into this. I just,
No, those are fair questions to ask about it. For once, I really don't have any issues with anything going on. The feminizing in the Disney short, I do find a little bit troubling. And now that I've seen the active resistance and the long film, it really changes the notion of both the picture book and the short film a great deal for me. And this is about him taking responsibility for the rest of his life, and he takes responsibility for the others too, and they all eventually come together and help each other out. So there's that that kind of traditional very happy ending where everybody, even the bully Valiente, participates and becomes and he finally lets up on Ferdinand because Ferdinand basically sacrifices himself for the rest of the bulls as they try to get away and succeed in doing that. So, yeah, it offers some interesting counters to maybe what I expected. I expected to find problems with it, but I didn't. Not really. Oh my gosh, don't everybody fall down at once. Comments?
think shifting the role from a mother role to a father role does give it a more center, if that makes any sense, like focuses it in more on the aspect of masculinity. And toxic masculinity.
And the toxic but the toxic doesn't come from the father and the son. It comes from Ferdinand and Dad. It comes from the rest of the bulls, and especially that father, Valiente's father. And that is toxic masculinity, for sure. And we can see the disappointment in Valiente as a calf when his father just really is very unkind to him.
Do you think had they chosen to keep it with another role,
It would have changed it entirely.
changed it?
Entirely. So, but we have bulls without testicles being very bullish. Do animals is it testosterone? I know that humans have testosterone. Is that what animals have?
I would assume.
I guess that's the commonality. Yeah.
Google searches in this class are so weird.
Be careful. Be careful what you encounter. So we didn't get Red Riding Hood done. We'll come back to that, and we'll come back to and we'll talk about your projects first thing next time. Otherwise, it's just Cinderella. The reading is light. Not such a bad thing, since you got work to do. Now that's not due until your work's not due till Friday, right?
Right.
Yeah. Questions, comments? We did a lot more watching this time than usual, but you didn't
Anytime
get
on Friday, Dr. Stewart?
Anytime. In fact, anytime.
11:59.
Anytime before I get up on Saturday. Anytime before I get up on Saturday morning. Although I think I'm going to throw some play this Saturday. Rode in a parade last Saturday. This time it's throwing some play. All right, then I will see you next week. Enjoy, and I don't know. I guess that's it. We made it. Another day.